They say the world is round,
Mama,
but not just in
please wake
shape,
up.
in justice. The poor cry today, the rich cry tomorrow. The strong mock today, the weak watch tomorrow. But the cruelest circle of all is when the very person you despise becomes your only lifeline.
You have to send
And
someone.
that is exactly what happened
She
to
is
Madame
getting
Kemi
worse.
Adeyemi. Kemi was once a name that shook Lagos. She married Chief Adeyemi at just 22. He was twice her age, a man of endless lands, houses, hotels.
Can
A
you hear
billionaire before billionaires became common. They said she didn't marry him for love. They said she married him for power. And maybe they were right. Because from the day she entered his mansion, her eyes were cold, sharper than the diamonds on her neck, hungrier than the gold around her wrists. Her voice cut like steel. Her smile was a mask. Her silence was dangerous. Chief adored her, spoiled her, but the servants whispered, "Madame Kemi is not a woman. She is a knife wrapped in silk." And as the years passed, the whispers proved true. She gave birth to 3 children, each one raised not with lullabies, but with rules, not with kisses, but with commands. When they cried, she called the nanny. When they failed exams, she called the cane. When they grew older, she taught them one lesson only. Money is the only blood that never dries. So they grew like her, hard, selfish, blind, and though they bowed before her, they also feared her, because Kemi ruled her house the way a general rules a battlefield. Even Chief himself could not cross her. But Chief did not live forever. One night, in a hotel in Abuja, he fell asleep and never woke up. Heart failure, they said, but Lagos whispered. Some said it was poison in his wine. Some said it was stress from his young mistresses. And some dared to whisper that Madame Kemi herself had a hand in it. No one proved anything. But after the burial, one truth was clear. The Iron Widow was born. For 30 years, she ruled Adeyemi estates. She bought judges. She silenced journalists. She crushed competitors. She built schools, yes, but for publicity. She built churches, yes, but for legacy. She gave charity, yes, but only when photographers flashed their cameras. Her empire grew. Her name sat on towers, markets, roads. She became untouchable. But power is a cruel lover. It leaves when beauty fades. By 75, her mansion was quiet. Her bed, once shared with a giant of a man, was empty. Her children, once crawling at her feet, were gone. They had taken her money, taken her gifts, and then taken their distance. One in America, living with a foreign wife. One in London, drinking his inheritance before she even died. One in Abuja, waiting like a vulture for her deathbed call. None visited, none cared, and so the Iron Widow became the forgotten widow. But fate is not without irony, because as her own children abandoned her, a stranger's child began to appear. At first, she thought it was madness. One evening, as a harmattan winds blew dust through her compound, she heard a scrape near the fence. She turned her weak neck and saw him, a boy, skin dark, ribs visible, shirt torn at the seams. He looked like Lagos had spat him out and left him to rot. Her first instinct was rage. "Get out of my house," she barked, her voice hoarse but still sharp. "I'll call security." But the boy didn't run, didn't beg, didn't even speak. He simply set down a cracked plastic plate on her balcony table. Inside it, a handful of rice. Cold, plain, probably from a dustbin. She stared. He stared back. Then, without a word, he turned and slipped back through the fence. The next day, he came again, this time with beans. Hard, half-burnt, but warm. The next day, roasted corn. Then yam. Then bread crusts. Always small. Always simple. Always enough. She cursed him. She called him mad. She threw one plate to the ground once. But when hunger pressed her bones at midnight, she found herself eating it. And so the ritual began. Every evening, every sunset, the boy came. The widow ate. Not once did he ask for thanks. Not once did he stretch out his hand. Only once, when her cough shook her lungs, did she whisper weakly, "Who are you?" And he replied in a whisper even weaker than hers, "My name is Chitty. I no get papa. I no get mama. But if I leave you hungry, maybe God leave me hungry too." Then he smiled, and for the first time in decades, she felt her heart move. Who was this boy? Why feed her? Why waste the scraps on a woman who had mansions, cars, and lands? She didn't know, didn't understand. But every evening, when she heard the scrape on the fence, she found herself waiting for him. The Iron Widow waiting for an orphan. But here's the part that would make the listener tremble. She had no idea who he really was. No idea that this boy she dismissed as a nameless street rat was her own blood, her own flesh, her own lost son, the child she once abandoned. The child fate had returned, not with revenge, but with mercy. And that mercy would tear her empire apart. They say mothers never forget the cries of their children, that even in sleep, even across oceans, a woman hears her baby's voice. But what if a mother chooses to forget? What if she buries that cry under money, under pride, under shame? That was Madame Kemi's secret, and it was darker than anyone could imagine. 40 years earlier, she was not the Iron Widow. She was just a frightened 20-year-old girl in a cramped room in Abaddon. Her father was a struggling trader. Her mother sold accra by the roadside. They loved her, but love didn't stop hunger. Kemi was clever, beautiful, ambitious. But ambition without money is like a bird with clipped wings. So when she met Chief Adeyemi at the university fundraiser, she saw her wings grow back. He was old, yes, but he was rich. And for a girl who had slept on raffia mats, rich meant rescue. She followed him, became his mistress, then his second wife. But before the marriage, something happened. Something she never wanted the world to know. She got pregnant, not for Chief, but for another, a young lecturer. Tall, handsome, poor. He spoke to her heart, not her pocket. And for one foolish year, she loved him in secret. But secrets don't stay buried long. When she missed her cycle, she panicked. When the test confirmed it, she shook. She told him. He promised marriage. But marriage to a poor man meant nothing compared to a billionaire's offer. So Kemi made a choice. She chose power. She chose Chief. And she chose to erase the child. But erasing is not so easy in Nigeria. She couldn't abort. Too dangerous, too scandalous. She couldn't confess. Her father would disown her. Chief would leave her. So she carried the pregnancy in silence. 9 months of shame hidden under wrappers. 9 months of lies about malarial weight. 9 months of praying the baby would disappear. And then one rainy night, the child came. A boy. Small, fragile, crying like thunder. Her mother helped her deliver. Her mother wept with joy. Her mother begged her, "Kemi, please don't throw away your blood." But Kemi's eyes were already cold. 2 nights later, she left the house. She wrapped the baby in a faded cloth, walked to the edge of the city, found a small Catholic orphanage, and without leaving her name, without leaving a trace, she left him at the gate. The nuns found him at dawn, half soaked in rain. They baptized him Chidi. Chidi, meaning God lives. But to Kemi, he was already dead. She buried him alive in her memory, never spoke of him again, never whispered his name. And when Chief married her in his mansion, she walked down the aisle with diamonds on her wrist, as if no baby had ever clung to her finger. The years rolled. She gave Chief 3 legitimate children. She built her empire. She became the Iron Widow. But what happened to the boy she left behind? That is where fate sharpened its knife. At first, Chidi had a chance. The nuns fed him, clothed him, taught him Bible verses. He was shy, soft-spoken, the kind of child who smiled even when hungry. But the orphanage was poor. Funds ran out. One by one, children were sent away. When he turned 8, the gates closed to him. "Find your life," the nun said, tears in her eyes. And so he walked into Lagos with nothing. He begged at markets. He slept under bridges. He fought for scraps. By 12, his ribs were knives. By 15, his hands were calloused from carrying loads at Oshodi. By 20, he had no family, no birthday, no surname, only hunger, and a memory he couldn't explain. The faint smell of expensive perfume, the faint shape of a woman's face he had seen only once. A face he thought belonged to a stranger, but it didn't. It belonged to his mother. And so, while Madame Kemi grew older in her mansion, surrounded by marble floors and portraits of her real children, her forgotten son walked barefoot in the dust, invisible, nameless, abandoned. Yet fate was patient. It waited for the moment when the woman who once thought money was her shield would need the hands of the boy she threw away. And that is why, when he scraped that fence and left her rice, when he brought beans, bread, yam, it wasn't just charity. It was destiny circling back. The boy she buried alive was feeding her breath by breath, and she had no idea. They say the walls of a mansion can keep out thieves, but they cannot keep out truth. Truth seeps through cracks, through whispers, through the eyes of a hungry child carrying a bowl of rice. That was how Musa, the barefoot orphan, stepped into Madame Kemi's world. It began quietly. The guards had grown used to him. At first they chased him, insulted him, called him dirty rat. But soon they noticed the old woman ate more when he came. They noticed her cough lessened. They noticed her eyes lit up only when that boy shuffled in with food. So one evening, when the sky was bruised with orange, Musa came again. This time, the gate did not slam in his face. The guard simply muttered, "Wait!" And a few minutes later, a young maid in uniform came out. "Madam, say bring him." Musa hesitated. No one had ever invited him inside a mansion. He looked down at his feet, cracked and dust-covered. He looked at his shirt, torn at the collar. He clutched his rusty food container tighter. "Me," he whispered. The maid nodded impatiently. "Yes, you. Come quick before Olga change mind." And so, step by trembling step, Musa entered the mansion. The floor was marble, cold, polished. It reflected his bare toes like a mirror. The chandeliers glowed above him, brighter than the sun he begged under. The air smelled of perfume and disinfectant. No dust, no smoke. He walked through halls lined with portraits, fat children in graduation gowns, men in agbada with gold chains, women in lace and gelly, smiling as if they had never tasted sorrow. Musa's stomach turned. These walls told stories of wealth, but none told his story. At last, they reached a wide bedroom. The curtains were half-drawn. The air hummed with the faint buzz of an oxygen machine. On the bed lay Madame Kemi. She looked smaller than Musa had ever imagined. No head tie, no jewelry. Her once proud face was lined with illness and regret. But when her eyes opened and fell on him, something flickered. Recognition? Memory? No, just surprise. "You!" she whispered. "The boy with the rice." Musa nodded, shy, holding out the container. "Yes, Ma. Today I bring yam. And small beans." Her lips trembled. For years, her own children had brought her nothing but bills and insults. Yet here was a stranger, thin as shadow, bringing her life. "Sit," she said weakly. The maid frowned, but Madame's hand rose like a command. "Leave us." The room grew quiet, only the machine's steady hiss, and the faint sound of Musa's breath. He placed the food on the table, then sat on the edge of the chair, too afraid to touch anything. Madame Kemi studied him, his cheekbones sharp, his eyes too old for his years, his hands scarred from street fights and carrying loads. There was something in those hands, something that made her chest ache. She didn't know why. "Boy, what is your name?" "Musa, Ma." "Musa." She repeated it slowly, as if tasting a forgotten language. "You have family?" He shook his head. "No mama, no papa, just me, since small." Something inside her twisted. She coughed, voice breaking. "And yet you feed me. Why?" Musa looked down, because no one had ever asked him that. "Why?" Finally, he said, "My mama, before she die, she tell me something. She say, never walk past somebody crying. Even if all you get is breath, give it." His voice cracked. "So when I see you that first day, I see your eyes. I know say you day cry inside. So, I give." Madame Kemi turned her face to the window. Her chest heaved once. Twice. She did not cry. Iron Widow never cried. But in that moment, she wanted to, because the boy's words pierced deeper than any insult her rich children had thrown. Day after day, Musa came, not just with food, with presents. He sat. He told her stories of the street, of boys who played football with bottles, of girls who sold groundnuts and laughed louder than rich ladies in parties. He made her laugh, a sound she had not made in years. A crack laugh, dry but real. And slowly, he became more than charity. He became comfort. But outside that room, whispers grew. The other children, the ones in the portraits, were not blind. They saw the way Madame asked for him. They saw the way her eyes followed him. They saw the way her strength returned when he walked in. And they hated it. "What is this nonsense?" snarled her eldest daughter, Funk. "A street rat in my mother's room? Maybe he's after her money," muttered the son, Deji. "Boys like that, they're smart. They pretend kindness, then they steal." But Kemi silenced them with one glance. "Leave him. He is more son than you." The word struck like a blade, and though she didn't mean them literally, fate was listening. Because soon, those words would prove prophecy. And yet, still, she did not know. She did not know that the boy spooning beans into her mouth, the boy who sat by her bedside whispering, "Don't sleep, Mama, stay awake," was her own blood, her own lost child, the son she left in the rain, the son she swore forget, the son who had found his way home, without even knowing it, that night. As rain beat on the mansion windows, Musa fell asleep on the chair by her bed, and Madame Kemi, staring at him through the shadows, whispered to herself, "Why do I feel like I've seen you before?" They say a lie can live for 40 years. But when truth comes, it only needs one night. That night came with rain. The storm outside rattled the windows of Madame Kemi's mansion. Thunder rolled like ancestral drums. Lightning split the sky in violent white flashes. But inside her room, silence. Only the hiss of oxygen, and the shallow breathing of a boy curled on a chair. Musa, barefoot, thin, head resting on folded arms. He had fallen asleep, watching her chest rise and fall. For the first time in years, she had slept without fear, because someone was watching her. Not a nurse paid by the hour. Not a child waiting for her will to be signed. But a boy with nothing, who guarded her like treasure. At dawn, she stirred, her throat dry, her body weak. Her eyes drifted to chair. The boy still slept, lips parted, one hand hanging loose. And then it happened. Her gaze fell upon his wrist, thin, scarred, and marked, a birthmark, dark, crescent-shaped, just below the bone. Her chest froze, her pulse hammered, because once many years ago, she had kissed that mark on a newborn skin, her own son's skin, the child she had lost, the child she had buried in memory, the child she had abandoned. "No," she whispered, trembling. "No, it cannot be." But her eyes would not lie. The mark was the same, the exact same. Suddenly her body felt heavier than stone. Her breath broke. Her mind raced back to that night, that cursed night. She remembered the shame, the whispers in the compound, the cruel voice of her husband. "This bastard is not mine. Throw him away or lose everything." She remembered the storm, the rain pouring, her tears mixing with it, and the bundle in her arms. So small, so helpless. Her son, she had wrapped him in cloth, pressed her lips against his wrist, kissed the crescent birthmark one last time, and left him by the roadside, left him crying, left him to fate. That memory had hunted her for decades, but she buried it under jewels, under cars, under politics, under wealth. She told herself the child was dead. She told herself it was better that way. She told herself Allah would forgive her weakness. But now that same boy was here, in her house, at her bedside, feeding her, cleaning her, saving her. Her son. A wail tore from her throat, low at first, then louder, louder. It shook the walls. It dragged the maids rushing in. "Madam, what is it? Pain? Should we call a doctor?" She waved them away with frantic hands. "No, leave us." The boy stirred awake, startled. "Auntie, you day okay?" Her lips trembled. Her eyes poured tears she had buried for 40 years. She pointed at his wrist. "That mark, will you get it?" Musa blinked. "This one? I don't know. Since small. People say I born with it." Her breath cracked. Her chest heaved. She clutched at her nightgown like it was tearing apart. Her voice broke into sobs. My God, Musa, you are mine." The boy frowned. He thought the sickness was twisting her mind. He rose to steady her. "Madam, please, no talk too much. You need rest." She grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "No, listen, you are not just Musa. You are my son." The words hung in the room like lightning frozen in air. Silence. Then thunder outside roared, as if to confirm it. Musa shook his head. "No, Ma. You mistake. I get no mama. I day streets and small. People tell me my mama die." She wept harder. "No, she did not die. She lived. She is here. She is me. I left you, Musa. I left you in the rain." Her voice broke into raw sobs. "I carried you 9 months. I birthed you. I kissed that very mark. And then I killed you with my fear. Forgive me. Forgive me." The boy stumbled back, his whole body trembling. It felt like the ground was splitting beneath him, like every memory was shattering. All the nights he had cried under bridges, all the mornings he had begged for bread, all the beatings, the hunger, the loneliness, all because this woman, this rich, powerful woman, had thrown him away. His lips quivered, his chest rose and felt like a drum. "You mean all my life, all my suffering, all my begging was because of you?" Her tears fell onto the sheets. "Yes, because of me, because I was weak, because I chose wealth over you, and I have paid every day since." He staggered, his eyes blurred with tears. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run. He wanted to hit her, to shake her, to ask her why. Why? Why did you leave me? Why did you let me rot? Why did you buy cars while I ate crumbs from gutters? The words choked him. His fists clenched. His breath burned. But then he saw her face. Not the Iron Widow. Not the untouchable billionaire. Just an old woman. Broken. Shaking. Begging with her eyes like a child. And suddenly, he could not hate her, even though he wanted to, even though he should. She stretched her hands toward him, trembling. "My son, forgive me. Even if you curse me, even if you spit on me, let me die knowing you heard me say it. You are mine." Her voice cracked. "You are Musa Falad, my blood, my lost heir, my shame and my salvation." The door burst open. Her children stormed in. Funk, Deji, the others, faces twisted with anger. "What is this nonsense? Mama, you are sick. This street rat cannot be your son." But Madame Kemi's voice thundered with new fire. "Silence. You call yourselves children? What have you given me? Nothing but greed and cruelty. But this boy you spit on, he gave me life." She pointed at Musa. "He is my son, my true son, my heir. And if you hate it, let the ancestors judge between us." The room erupted. Her children screamed. The maids wept. The storm outside shook the mansion. But Musa stood frozen. Every sound faded. Every face blurred. All he heard was her voice. All he saw was her tears. His mother, the woman he had longed for, hated, dreamed of, cursed, prayed for. All in one. He fell to his knees. Not because he had forgiven. Not because the pain was gone. but because the weight of truth crushed him, and all he could do was cry. Cry like the child left in the rain. Cry like the boy who had fed strangers. Cry like the son who had finally found his mother. And she reached out, pulled him against her frail chest, held him as if trying to make up for 40 lost years in one embrace. Her tears wet his hair, his tears wet her gown. Two broken souls. At last, one again. They say when truth finally comes, it burns, but it also heals. That night, the mansion shook with storms. But inside, for the first time, Madame Kemi and Musa found silence. The silence of wounds uncovered. The silence of blood rediscovered. The silence of a mother and son, lost, then found. And though the world outside would rage, though the other children would fight, though inheritance wars would rise, nothing could erase the mark on Musa's wrist. Nothing could erase the truth. He was hers, and she was his. At last,